Good Tuesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Browns with a Players' Day off. Jeff Saturday, former NFL offensive lineman, short-time head coach in the NFL, on ESPN's First Take, was asked, can the Browns now make a Super Bowl run with a healthy Deshaun Watson?
When you think about a team that's ranked number one in just about every defensive category known to man, I'll go through it. Number one in yards per game, pass yards per game, sack percentage, first downs allowed per game, third down percentage. Listen, this team can keep you in games playing defensively. Now flip it over to offensively. They're 8th in the league in NFL red zone efficiency. That's huge. They're 3rd in rush yards per game, and they're 1st in time of possession. So what am I telling you? They shorten games. They make teams with high-powered offenses become normal, and it becomes very difficult. And when you're a high-powered offense, you want to score, you want to be on the field. If you're sitting there watching games, you feel that pressure. The catalyst for this whole thing going, Stephen A. and Shannon, is not only Deshaun Watson's health, but his productivity. And I need to see him get back to pulling the ball down and using his legs more often.
Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, we saw that in that game against the Cardinals. We also saw him use his legs and then dump it to running backs. I thought he was pretty effective.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to change the way that he plays football just because he has this strained rotator cuff. And we've seen that in Deshaun Watson, that he's going to still run around. He's still going to, as Myles Garrett said about him in the his post-game press conference, that he's going to sacrifice life and limb to go out there and make a play. He's always been like that, and that's not going to change. So the Browns are lucky that they have a quarterback like that who's just willing to mix it up at any time, use his legs, use his arm, and it should make for a very wild ride the rest of the way.
We'll talk a little bit more about Watson in a minute. Browns did make some roster adjustments and moves. So Jedrick Wills placed on injured reserve. That not a surprise. A little bit of a surprise. Cameron Mitchell is also placed on injured reserve. Some corresponding roster moves as well. You see Jaron Christian, who they signed to the practice squad, is now signed to the active roster. And James Prochet also signed to the active roster. You see a couple of names, Trinity Benson, Vincent Gray, Justin Murray, signed to the practice squad, and Asiasi released from the practice squad. Mary Kay, when you look at all that, James Prochet looks like something the Browns need in the punt return game. I haven't seen a guy like that in quite a few. I'm not going to say since Josh Cribbs, but he had a burst to him.
Yeah, he does. And, let's see what he can do against this Ravens team that's going to be ready for him now. But you're right. He showed a flash there, and that's been a point of emphasis over the last couple of weeks to get Bubba Ventrone, somebody who can go out there and help them out in the return game. In the same way that the Browns have helped Jim Schwartz have the personnel that he needs, they're willing to give Bubba what he needs to get the job done. So good for him that he's got James Prochet right now. And hopefully for them, it will continue to be looking good.
Cam Mitchell on IR is tough. He was playing well.
Yeah, he stepped in for Greg Newsome as the nickel corner in this past game. And, he's their second best option for that job behind Greg. And Greg, of course, has been out with a groin injury. He missed the Cardinals game. And, now he's going to probably really have to try and get back for this game if he possibly can. And so that is a loss. Cam played well, and he's been filling in even when he's not, the number one nickel guy. When Greg is around, he's been filling in from time to time, playing really well on special teams, and he's kind of made a name for himself this year.
So take a look at this tweet. This is from Dan Murphy, Browns PR man. Deshaun Watson, 4-1 as a starter for the Browns at home. Browns have outscored their opponents 101-26 in those 5 games. 4-1's pretty good, and you see the point differential. I mean, are we not realizing we're getting better quarterback play?
Yeah, and not only is he 4-1 at home, but this season he's 4-1, and it's sort of a quiet 4-1 that he has compiled because he's been in and out of the lineup. But he also did get credit for the Colts victory that he left early. But still, I mean, he's 4-1 this season, and there's something to be said for that. And now he's got to keep it going. He's got his two toughest tests of the season coming up. I mean, the Steelers were a pretty tough test on the road, but he did lose that game. So now he's got these two enormous tests coming up in Baltimore and then at home against the Steelers, two really good defenses. He doesn't have his starting left tackle anymore. He doesn't have a starting right tackle either. They're down to number 2 over there, although DeJuan Jones is doing a really, really nice job. But you look at the second half of this season, and they don't have the 3 pillars of their running game, their wide zone running scheme, and that are that's their 2 tackles in Jack Conklin, Jed Wills, and then Nick Chubb. So they've had to pivot, they've had to make some changes, but they're making do. And if they can put it all together in the second half of the season, this team is going to make some noise and scare some teams if they get into the tournament.
So I know you did this on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. What do you think Deshaun Watson showed in that return on Sunday?
Well, first of all, I was concerned about some of the short passes that he was leaving short or that were off the mark. At first, I was like, what is this? And it reminded me of some of the things that I had seen in practice. Even on Friday, I saw him drop a couple of balls at the feet of Elijah Moore in the red zone, in the end zone. And so it was a concern. It seems like there was something lacking on the touch on the short ball. But I think some of it was also a confidence issue in the first half of the game. I think he built up his confidence in the second half and felt good about what he was doing, especially when he was able to open up and throw that long pass, the first one, the 59-yarder. I think he realized, okay, I've got this. I can do this. And, a lot of this game is mental, especially, when you're a quarterback and you're talking about having to use your arm, your shoulder, the thing that you need the most, obviously. And he wasn't able to use it in the Colts game. And, I think in this game, he had some trepidation in the beginning, and then he worked through that. So he warmed up the shoulder, and he warmed up his brain as well. I think he got really, really confident and was, able to tell himself, I've got this, I can do this. And so, I think by the second half, he was way more back to himself.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hey, folks. Now that we have our veteran starter back at QB with a good showing under his belt, could we see more tempo on offense, even in Baltimore? We handled the Seattle Superdome crowd noise quite well. Granted, we want to keep Lamar Jackson off the field, but let me ask this question. Is it better to win the time of possession battle or have more plays than the other team? Let's break a tendency and up the tempo in this game and keep their defense off balanced and beat them on the scoreboard. What are your thoughts? This is a must-win if we want to win a division. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. What about it? Up tempo or possession time?
Oh, it's a really good question. It tastes great, less filling. So, I do think that, there's something to be said for both of those. And I think the Browns are going to have to change it up in this game. I think that they want to keep the Ravens off the field as much as possible. This is a dangerous offense, more dangerous than really they have been in a number of years. Lamar Jackson has taken his game up to another level. They've got a really good running game going. Now they've got a rookie out there making some hay in Mitchell. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. Now, I think this Browns defense is going to go in there with their hair on fire. They did not like how they played against the Ravens the first time. Roquan Smith was able to back up what he said about coming in there and, and beating them. And I think the Browns are going to go in with the same mentality heading into Baltimore. They like to be doubted. They loved to be doubted when it came to shutting down the San Francisco 49ers. And so I think they're going to go in there with that same swag, that same mindset of we are the best defense in the world and we are about to show you.
So this was from one of your Hey Mary Kays. How do you think the Browns managed left tackle with Jedrick Wills now on the injured list?
Well, I think that what they should do is probably just put James Hudson over there and not shake up too many positions. they have other options. They could put DeJuan Jones over there from the right side. They could possibly slide Joel Bitonio over there. But I don't know if you want to upset the apple cart that much. The thing about offensive linemen is they need to be able to play together. They need to have that communication with the guy next to them. And so I don't know if I would go jumbling it all up. I think I would put James over there, and then I think I would give him the help that he's probably going to need. It's going to be a tough 2 weeks. I mean, my goodness, you've got Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt coming up after this. But these Ravens are formidable. They lead the NFL with 35 sacks, and they're coming from everywhere. They're coming from inside. They're coming from outside. And so I just would not mess up too many positions. I would go with James over there, and then I would chip him. And I would get creative with the chipping. I've come up with, just a few different ideas for, some chipping help. But, use Nick Harris over there a little bit if you have to.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason when we return.
This is the 50, 100, 500 scratch-off from the Ohio Lottery. A much cleaner way of winning. We precision-crafted 3 perfect increments of cash, $50, $100, and $500, and created the only game that pays exclusively in those increments. Hence the clever name. 50, 100, 500. Ideal quantities for dining foods, clothing wear, or stereophonics. The simplicity is breathtaking. Play 50, 100, 500, and transform how you feel about winning.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, this is Bernard from New Philadelphia. I don't want to hear about Deshaun Watson, looks good and all this and that. He had 6 passes yesterday that looked good. Let's be honest with everybody. If it wasn't for Jim Schwartz in the defense, I think we got 17 points off of turnovers, and they gave him great field position all day long. We don't beat them, period. Everybody give me a break on Deshaun Watson. He's a flop.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, sometimes it only takes 6 passes to beat a team if they're the right 6 passes. Here's the thing. It's not like you have to complete 90% of your passes. The 2 deep balls that he made, they're momentum swingers. Those are like turnovers in essence, in a positive way for an offense.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't think anybody looked out there and thought that Deshaun Watson had the game of his life and was 100% back. He even said after the game that he was not 100%. I think the key was you could see that he hit a couple of long balls, and that was, nobody knew if he could do that. Nobody knew if he could really complete a pass over 30 yards. Now, again, the short passes were a concern, and I don't know if they will continue to be a concern. I'll be interested to watch some of the warm-ups and some of the early parts of practice that we get to watch on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Because I'm curious to see if there is something about this rotator cuff that makes it difficult for him to make that shorter throwing motion. So we'll have to see about that. But the fact that he could launch it and heave it like that, I thought that was key. And he also took some big hits, and he withstood those hits. So I don't think anybody, drew this up as, the definitive Deshaun Watson great, amazing game. But it was a good, respectable comeback game with some nice deep balls that as you mentioned, helped them win the football game.
And he didn't turn the ball over, which again, that's one of the main things that they had been not able to avoid. This again from your Hey Mary Kay. Do you think Zadarius Smith will start taking over games in the second half of the year?
Well, I think the good thing about this past game was the fact, and I asked Miles about this after the game, everybody got involved. All the dogs got to eat. It wasn't just the Myles Garrett show. Nobody wants that. Everybody wants everybody to feel good, because if you have a bunch of different guys on your defense making plays and feeling good about themselves, they're going to be excited to go out there in the next game and do the same thing over again and build on that and build on that. And I think Zadarius is going to start showing up a little bit more, and maybe maybe the Browns will even put him in some more advantageous situations where he can go out and, produce as well, because that's when you have a happy defense, when most of your guys are getting the production that they deserve to get.
So this is from Pro Football Focus. Take a look. Lowest passer rating allowed in single coverage, minimum of 60 snaps. Kenny Moore is tops, 13.2. Joey Porter Jr., the Steelers, 16.5. 3 and 4 are the Browns cornerbacks. Martin Emerson at 23.9. Denzel Ward, 24.2. Again, that is lowest passer rating allowed when in single coverage. That is how good the Browns corners have been. They have 2 of the top 4 in the league.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, they're really taking well to the man coverage, all this man coverage that they're playing. They've got the athletic ability, they've got the speed to be able to do it. Now, again, I want to temper the enthusiasm just the slightest bit. They are coming off of a game in which they just beat the 1-8 Cardinals, and everybody padded stats. Everybody, got to walk out of that game feeling great about themselves. And it's not going to be that simple over the next 2 weeks. We all know that. Let's be honest about that. But yes, these are 2 really, really good cornerbacks that the Browns have. And it's nice to see Denzel kind of rebounding from what was a little bit of an off year for him last year. So to see him going out there, we heard Juan Thornhill yesterday call him the best cornerback in the NFL. And so, it's nice to see Denzel, just playing like the first rounder and the Pro Bowler that he is.
All right, again, another one from your Haymare case. After 9 weeks in the NFL, where would you rank the Browns overall?
Well, you know what? I mean, they look like a playoff team to me, and they look like a team that can beat anybody in the NFL. And now that Deshaun Watson is back, I think that they really should be able to, first of all, make the playoffs. And when they get in there, they should be able to scare a lot of teams. I think by the time Deshaun Watson gets to that point, I think he's going to be playing really well. And I think he's going to have other guys involved in the offense more so than just Amari Cooper. And I think that's important. Just like I mentioned about the defense, I think all the different guys on offense need to be feeling good about themselves. I think Elijah Moore, it would help if they could get him some early touches, get him warmed up, get him in the end zone. Maybe throw him some deeper passes, especially with Marquise Goodwin out with a concussion potentially for this game. So I think everybody on offense needs to, make sure that they're getting the kind of production that's going to keep them, really fired up about helping this team moving forward. But there's still a lot of room for improvement.
So this year's team compared to last year's team, what's the atmosphere, the feel, the vibe, if you will?
I think it's really good in terms of, we can just start on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, the camaraderie and the kinship over there, the brotherhood that they have going on that side of the ball has been really good. And, last year we saw some situations where guys were not necessarily finger pointing. That might be a little bit too strong of a word, but they just weren't always on the same page. If there was a blown coverage, we saw the raised shoulders and the hands out and different things like that. You're not seeing anything like that anymore. These guys understand their assignment. They know what they're supposed to do. Jim Schwartz has them playing for each other. He has the, all for one and one for all thing going on over there. And so the culture over there has really, really been good. And they're getting together, they're having dinner together. It reminds me of some of the, the old time teams of the, the late 80s or whatnot, when they were going to AFC championship games and they were really close and tight knit. So it's good to see that. I think there's been new energy from guys like Juan Thornhill, from Obo, from Z, helping to bring guys together. And I think Miles is having more fun than I've ever seen him have. And so far, so good.
All right, before we go to break, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, this is your boy from Vegas. I've been sitting here listening to your show every day, and Cleveland fans just must have forgot what it's like to have a team that's no good versus a team that halfway through the season we're sitting technically with a chance to have first place. Go Browns and keep Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry before we get worse. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I've been kind of surprised at how many people have not realized Kevin Stefanski's doing a pretty good coaching job, I think, and Andrew Berry has given him the tools to do it.
Yeah, let's remember, once again, I've mentioned this already, but let's review. They've lost Nick Chubb. They've lost Jack Conklin. Now they've lost Jed Wills. They lost Deshaun Watson for 4 games for all intents and purposes. And here they are at 5-3. And, they really have a good chance to make the playoffs this year. And I think he's done the best job that he can with what he's had to work with over there on the offensive side of the ball. Again, there's plenty of room for improvement. You need to see Moore get more involved. You want to see David Njoku get more touchdown passes. You want to see Ced Tillman kind of, come in there and make up for the loss of Donovan Peoples-Jones. There needs to be more than Amari Cooper. But, he's cobbled together a running game. They're number 3 in the NFL right now heading into this game. And so I think he's actually done a remarkable job.
Mary Kay Cabot and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also talk specifically about the Ravens game coming up. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Y'all going to find out, just like the big 49ers got sent on their big tailspin when the Browns put it all over the Ravens this weekend. They're going to go on a big losing streak too because we're about to expose them. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, I hope the caller is right. I am not as confident, but Ravens are playing well.
Well, the Ravens are playing well, but this is exactly the kind of game that the Browns love it when nobody gives them a chance, when they're not favored to win the game, when it's them against the world and everybody thinks that they're going to lose. That's when they come out with their hair on fire. That's when they come out all guns blazing. And I think that's what they're going to do in this game. I think that they want to prove that they can solve the Lamar Jackson riddle. And I think they want to show who they are in the AFC North. And this could be a big statement game for them. I think the defense especially is going to want to come out and avenge that 28-3 loss on October 1st and prove that they are really the best defense in the world.
All right, so take a look at this. This is interesting. Teams with a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. The caller referenced the 49ers, who the Browns beat. They're 3rd on offense, 9th on defense. Ravens 5th on offense, 3rd on defense. See the Cowboys, Chiefs, and Lions. So it's Ravens and then Steelers. Is a split of those two good enough, do you think?
I think so. I think if you come out of these next 2 games 1-1, all your dreams and hopes and goals are still in front of you. I think you can make up some ground. Obviously they need to win their division games for the tiebreaker situation, but if they can stack enough victories, they can get in as a wild card, even if they don't win the AFC North, but that's still in front of them as well. So it would be better if they could probably beat the Ravens. If they're going to have to lose one, they would want to beat the Ravens so they can get the be even in that tiebreaker. So yeah, it's I think 1-1 is probably going to be a feel-good situation for them. 2-0 would be better. 0-2 is not going to be good for anyone.
So this is a tweet from the NFL on CBS. Lamar Jackson leads quarterback completion percentage 71.5 and rush yardage 440 this season. The only quarterback to do that in a single season since the merger, which is 1970, was Steve Young in 1994. So let's talk about this offense. It's operating at a high level. I mean, they have gone out and put together a nice run, especially the last 3-4 weeks. How prolific is this offense? How concerning is this offense for the Browns defense?
Well, I do think that, it will be their toughest challenge that they've faced so far. But remember, we looked at those San Francisco 49ers, and that seemed almost insurmountable at the time. Now you look back at that game, and, I did think that it was a factor for them that they did not have Deebo Samuel for most of that game. And then they lost Christian McCaffrey at the end when they needed him the most. And they had Trent Williams gimping around on one ankle there. So, I think that really hurt the 49ers in that game. And, sometimes you have to be a little bit fortunate, a little bit lucky in this game to get where you want to go. I mean, the Browns are a little bit lucky that they didn't have to get Kyler Murray last week, that they got Clayton Tune instead of him. But, nobody looks at those things in the final analysis. When you get to the end of the season, they look at the record, they look at the tiebreakers, and you're either in or you're out. It doesn't matter how the heck you got there. If you get in, it's open season and anybody can accomplish anything. So I think the Browns, this is the biggest challenge for them offensively. I think it is going to be bigger than the 49ers because, like I said, the 49ers were not at full strength in that game. The Ravens are going to be full strength, but I think the Browns defense is just so determined to get this one.
So it'll be the first time that Jim Schwartz goes against a division opponent, so the first time that you see a second game against a team. Do you think they switched some things up from that first time?
I don't think they're going to be able to switch too many things up, and I don't think that they really should or that they need to. I think for the most part, you just have to do everything better than you did it in that game, especially, stopping the run. And again, now you've got this new rookie who's going to be out there trying to run all over you. So it's certainly not going to be easy. And then there's crowd noise and all kinds of other things. And remember this about the Ravens defense. We talk a lot about the Cleveland Browns defense. That Ravens defense right now, they own the crown in the statistic that matters most, and that's points scored on you. And they're number one in the NFL in that category with just a little over 13. On top of that, they lead the NFL with 35 sacks, as we might have mentioned before. They're coming from everywhere, and they're going to make this game really, really hard on Deshaun Watson. So, it's almost going to have a playoff atmosphere. It's just an enormous game. And if they can come out of here with a win, I think they're going to be riding high for the rest of the season.
All right, before I let you go, what's the formula? How do they get it done?
First of all, they can't turn the ball over, and, it was a good sign for them that they did not turn the ball over against the Cardinals. So even though it was the Cardinals, the fact that they protected the football, that's the number one thing that they have to do. And then somehow they have to find a way to, solve the Lamar Jackson puzzle. And that's just not going to be easy. He's just playing his best ball under Todd Monken, and this is going to be a dogfight.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for The Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Great Browns coverage for cleveland.com as well as The Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, I did some research. The Browns had 18 head coaches, only 5 had winning records. Those were percentages for the top 5 and rounded off to whole numbers. Paul Brown, 76%, Latin Collier, 69%, Marty Schottenheimer, 64%, Nick Skorich, 55%, and Kevin Stefanski, 54%. So I think their records speak for themselves, and I use ProFootballHistory.com as a reference. Thank you. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, that was in reference to some calls that we got yesterday and earlier in the week that were critical of Kevin Stefanski, and I quite honestly don't see it. It's kind of rare when a coach that has not been in a place that long has a record above 500 in the NFL. That usually extends his tenure in the NFL.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and you know, when you're talking Paul Brown, Blanton Collier, Nick Skorich, those were like 3 coaches in a row that were kind of on a, you know, continuum. And so, other Marty Schottenheimer, I was aware of that, you know, Kevin Stefanski was NFL Coach of the Year just a couple years ago, his first year in 2020. He hasn't forgot whatever got him to that point. I think he's had some bad quarterback play. I think he got the most out of what he had with Baker Mayfield and Jacoby Brissett, and even with the guys, you know, without Watson playing this year. So, no, I think he's actually, for them to be above 500 at this point of the season, you know, I get it. I mean, he has a play call you don't like. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, it's the coach's fault. But you hear that in about every city. Believe it or not, you know, Mike Tomlin's never had a losing record. And when I'm in Pittsburgh for their games, they talk about how critical the fans are of him. And, you know, and it's, the grass is always greener. You know, what are you going to do? You bring in a new coach whenever it is. We've been here with the Browns. You fire everybody because they want to have their own people and they start from scratch. And then you have, you know, that honeymoon, you know, deal for a couple years. And then, you know, then you get back into the same thing. So, no, I mean, I think he's done fine. He really hasn't. The biggest criticism is the offense, that it's his baby. You really haven't had a chance to see what it's supposed to look like, you know, with a healthy Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair. All right, one thing that has been really good has been the Browns' defense. This is first downs allowed in the NFL this season. Browns have allowed 88. Next closest is the Cowboys at 122. The Saints have allowed 135. The league average is 148. That is how good Jim Schwartz's defense has played. Now, I mean, they've been gashed for some big plays. But again, if you're allowing 88 first downs, think about that. You're getting off the field on third down a significantly more than 50% of the time.
Well, again, last week against the Cardinals, they were 1 for 12, and the one was right at the end of the game when it was kind of in prevent mode, and they, you know, the quarterback ran it, you know. In fact, he was their leading rusher, and that wasn't saying much. So now the defense, that's what I said. There's a case that this team could be undefeated. You know, the 3 games they've lost, it's really been the offense's downfall, either turn the ball over or not scoring when they had chances. So, you know, you know, they had a couple games in a row, the Colts game, the Seahawks game. There were some questions. Sure, the competition was weak last week, but they did what they had to do. It was like the 3rd best performance in NFL history, you know, as far as number of yards, 58 yards in the game. And I went through the play-by-play, and Arizona only got into the Browns' territory as far as the Browns' 44. And I think they only had 5 or 6 plays on the Browns' side of the ball. So it was totally dominating.
So the Browns had 34 sacks last year in 17 games. This year, 33 sacks in just 8 games. Again, it's that defense and the mindset they have.
Yeah, I looked at that, and I think they have 26 sacks. But either way, they're gonna have way more than they had last year, and it's because you got some pass rushers, you got an aggressive defense, and Joe Woods kind of played a little softer. They didn't play as aggressive as Jim Schwartz is playing it, and it's what we anticipated, and. The two most important categories is points allowed and takeaways. And they weren't getting the takeaways. They were holding the points down. But they're now starting to get the takeaways, and it's making this defense really strong.
So I know you've written an article for the Orange and Brown Report. What do the Browns need to do to put themselves in position to make a run in the playoffs, do you think?
Well, I think they really have to just win the games they're supposed to win, that are on the schedule. In the past, we've seen so many times where Browns teams lose games against teams that they're supposed to beat. And when you look, I did a little research, I wrote a story about it last week, that their upcoming 5 games, that include the Cardinals, was I think the opposing records were something like .435, less than 500, and that was including the Ravens and the Steelers. Now that they're past the first one, they still, other than the Ravens, are 7-2. The Steelers are the only one with a winning record in the next 4 games. As far as after the Steelers at home, then you go and you play the Broncos and the Rams. Those winning percentages are low. And then in the rest of the schedule throughout the year, the combined, they have 6 games against teams that have losing records right now. And you need to get 5 more wins, because if you can get to 10 wins, my research said since they expanded to 7 teams in each conference, only once has a team got to 10 wins and didn't make the playoffs, and that was the Dolphins. They were 10-6. So right now the Browns have 5 wins. They need to find at least 5 wins, and they have 6 games that I would consider very winnable games. A couple are on the road, but games against teams with a losing record. And if they win 5 of them, I would say they're in the playoffs. And so they need to win the next 2 weeks if they want to get back in the hunt in AFC North, in my opinion, because those games count double. But even if you lose to the Ravens this week, you're still in good position to have a run. And I really think these next 4 games, particularly the last 3, the Steelers, the Broncos, and the Rams, you win them, you could be, put yourself at 8-4 after 12 and set yourself up for the stretch run where you really only have to, win 2 or 3 out of the remaining 5 to get in the playoffs.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about the upcoming game with the Ravens. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Stephen A. Smith on ESPN's First Take on if he believes the Browns can make a Super Bowl run.
My answer would be immediately no.
Okay.
And the reason I feel that way is because Nick Chubb's not there. Even though Kareem Hunt is no slouch, he's not Nick Chubb. Obviously, you traded Peoples-Jones. Amari Cooper, even though he's a worthy number one receiver, we've seen him in Dallas when he was a number one receiver, and we see what that materialized into. And we're still waiting for Deshaun Watson to show up and remind us of what he once was when he was a Houston Texan. Right now, he's left that responsibility to C.J. Stroud because he's balling the way Deshaun Watson used to ball in a Houston Texans uniform. Their defense is real. It's legit. I have no doubt about it. But offensively, there are a lot of questions about the Cleveland Browns. And when you consider the way Baltimore is looking and the way Cincinnati is now on the come up having won 4 straight, it's hard for me to look at Cleveland and talk about a Super Bowl run as long as Deshaun Watson doesn't have his act together.
Fred, I can't necessarily argue with that, but the question becomes, why can't Deshaun Watson get his act together? He had a rotator cuff strain. He looked pretty good. They just can't turn the ball over. This defense is good enough if you don't put yourself on short fields and you just make the plays that are there, you can win a lot of football games against good football teams.
Yeah, you really want to, you have like I said, you have a little launching pad now ramping up. You want to play your best, late in the year. So teams we've seen that, everybody forgets about what you do in the first half of the season is if you're playing your best down the stretch. We've seen wild card teams get in the playoffs, get on a roll, got hot at the right time. And that's what the Browns want to do. And that's what I said. The schedule sets up for them. Put themselves in position to make a run for the playoffs. And the defense, like we were just saying, they had the ability to be a top 10 defense right now, depending on the stat that you value. They're first or second or third, but they're definitely top 5 overall. And, in the special teams has been first or second. So those are 2 areas you wanted to address, and you went out and did that. But your offense has been what's kept you down. Now, the last 2 games that Watson has played the full game, the Titans game and the Cardinals game, he looked like he's heading in the right direction. I felt it was very important to play in the Cardinals game to get some of the rust off, to get back on track heading into these 2 big games with the Ravens and the Steelers. And I think the 3 big questions, I have a story, actually, I think it's coming out right now. The 3 big questions about Deshaun Watson, at least in my mind, he addressed. First of all, could he finish a game? Was he healthy to play the whole game? Second, was he able to make all the throws, including the deep throws? He threw 3 deep balls, 2 of them right on the money. And the last one was he able to run or take a hit and be able to get up and continue? He ran 3 times, was hit pretty well. He also was sacked, and he had 5 quarterback hits. So there's no question in my mind that he is heading in the right direction. Now it's a whole different ball game going into the Ravens this week. That's a completely different defense. But I think it gives Browns fans some hope that he is trending in the right direction and would be much better equipped to pick up where he left off last week and be able to get this offense on track, because I believe the defense will keep you in games. The offense just has to be able to not turn the ball over and to score enough points to win the games, because this defense is probably going to keep your opponent under 20 points. And any average offense ought to be able to get 20 or more points if they don't turn it over. And last week was a good sign. You can make the case, David, in my opinion, the 3 games they lost, the offense played a major factor in those losses. Whether, the Steelers, they outright lost the game. And in the Seahawks, the turnovers, especially at the end there, cost them the game. And I'd even make a case the Ravens game that the offense contributed heavily in jump-starting the Ravens in that win.
Yeah, it would be tough to argue that. So everybody looks back at that Ravens loss that the Browns had, and it wasn't close. The Ravens kind of pulled away from them. But take a look at these notes on it. Ravens only had 296 yards of total offense when they beat the Browns in Week 4. That's less than what the Packers average at 24th in the NFL. Of their 28 points, 14 of them came on short fields, 38 and 10 yards, off of 2 of DTR's interceptions. DTR also had another turnover. What do you think went wrong the first time the Browns played the Ravens?
Well, they threw Dorian Thompson-Robinson out there an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. They really didn't have a plan, I don't think, because I think Deshaun Watson told them he's going to be good to go. And then they got the results of the MRI on Saturday night showing that it was, worse than what they were thinking. And he said, well, let me give it a go before the game, and then we'll make a decision. Well, obviously, we know what happened. It turned into 6 weeks. But here's my take on that game. If you remember, the defense came out 3 and out on the first series with Jackson. On the second series, 3 and out. And then DTR threw an interception that was returned 52 yards to the Browns' 10. Lamar Jackson did a quarterback run right up the middle, 10 yards untouched, touchdown. It just seemed to click and jumpstart the Ravens. From then on, the defense, it seemed to let down. They got behind, and then the Ravens just were going downhill. There was the 2 turnovers, that first one, and then there was another one that gave Jackson a short field. And as the caller said, they got another touchdown. So, in my opinion, the offense jump-started the Ravens' offense, and I really think whether it's human nature, I think they knew that they weren't going to come from behind, with a rookie quarterback against the Ravens' defense. And so that one, I think was the coaching staff or the front office to leave them in that position, but that's history now. But I do think that the defense, was put in a tough situation. They did have a couple drives that they gave up that had been uncharacteristic, but I'm anxious to see them with a fresh start, this week. I think the key, I've said it over and over, is stopping Lamar Jackson from running, because when he extends plays, and that would be, I would think the number one task. That's what happened in that game. He got things going with his legs. And the Browns have been pretty good in previous years under Joe Woods. And JOK particularly had almost been used in a spy situation, and they had kept him under control. That one game, the Ravens won, but he threw 4 interceptions in the first half, and they blanketed him, and his stat line was very poor. But the Browns defense just really needs to contain Jackson and not let him singly beat him. And then the offense, sure, has to make plays, but I think everything sets up for the Browns to give it their best shot over there. I mean, everybody is pretty much, handed it that the Ravens are going to win this game because they're rolling very well. And, I think the Browns kind of have nothing to lose. Like I said, it's not the end of the world. If you lose this game, put you right back in the hunt in the division. That's your best bet to get to the playoffs. But a loss pretty much puts you in bad situation on all the tiebreakers and so forth. So, but I think they can go over there and play loose, knowing it's not the end of the world playoff-wise if they lose.
How curious are you to see what Jim Schwartz's defense does this second time around against them?
I think it's the story. You got 2 very good statistic defenses, and it's going to come down to turnovers. The one difference, the Ravens are, they're in the positive category in the turnover ratio, and the Browns have been at the bottom. Last week they were +3. For the first time, they were in the positive, and they won big, but they moved up like 8 spots. They're still in the negative column at -4, but if they can take care of the ball, I think this is a toss-up, because it's usually who turns the ball over in these games that end up winning in the NFL. And in a defensive struggle, I expect that'll be the case this week.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
All right, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Make sure you check him out. Always really good Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavs. Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Straight ahead, we're talking Cavs on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
This is the 50, 100, 500 scratch-off from the Ohio Lottery. A much cleaner way of winning. We precision-crafted 3 perfect increments of cash, $50, $100, and $500, and created the only game that pays exclusively in those increments. Hence the clever name. 50, 100, 500. Ideal quantities for dining foods, clothing wear, or stereophonics. The simplicity is breathtaking. Play 50, 100, 500, and transform how you feel about winning.
Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers, off to a 3-4 start, coming off a win at home against the Warriors. First time they've beaten Golden State in who knows how long. Now they head out on a road trip. Let's welcome in Sam Amico, hoopswire.com. Sam, I know you wrote an article about this. How important is this road trip? It starts tomorrow in Oklahoma City, so Wednesday in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, it's important from the sense that you want to try to get, okay, there's 4 games. You're going out to the West Coast. You get to face the Warriors again, and it's still fresh in their mind what happened in Cleveland on Sunday, and you're playing them 6 days later at their place. Obviously, they're going to be especially motivated, Golden State. So from the Cavs perspective, you just now got back your starting 5 with Jared Allen coming back and Darius Garland. And for the most part, the Cavs have played well. With the exception of the first half against Indiana, they played well for the last 6 quarters. So this road trip is really, you want to try to build off that, get some momentum going. Like you said, it starts against the Thunder, who beat Cavs light in Cleveland. And then you've got Sacramento, who's not been playing great, and Golden State and Portland in there. Portland's obviously a young team, not playing real well. So, if you're the Cavs, theoretically, you want to play your brand of basketball, which is defense first, believe it or not, but it is. And if you do that, you give yourself a chance to win on the road. And, theoretically, you'd like to win all 4, but if you can get 2, you could consider that a win.
Do you think most of the struggles that they had earlier in the year is because they didn't have Garland, they didn't have Allen? There were games where LeVert was out, Mitchell missed one. There were parts missing throughout the first 7 games.
It's hard to get any kind of continuity going with that, especially not just your starting lineup, but now your bench is impacted because the guys who are really your top reserves are now starting. And, there's so much. You hear them talk about the offensive line in football, about how they all have to be in unison and a very cohesive unit. It's the same thing with your starting 5. The more successful teams generally are the teams that have played together the longest, particularly in the regular season. Now, the Cavs don't have to worry about that right now because there's still 75 more of these things to go. So they've got plenty of time. But, it is important to keep the starting 5 mostly whole as you can. And then that way they get used to playing together. And then your bench guys get used to their regular minutes, what's expected of them. Their role doesn't fluctuate as much if they're, not in the starting lineup as far as the reserves are concerned. So I definitely think some of those early season, well, it's still the early season, but some of those first week games where the Cavs lost, particularly at Thunder at home, Indiana at home, I think that those games were really kind of a result of the Cavs just not having all their guys.
When you look at some of the pieces that were added, Nyang, Strus, Ty Jerome has been banged up too. Do they look like they fit in how the Cavs envisioned them to?
Yeah, I think what you saw against Golden State was really what the Cavs envisioned with this, not just the newcomers, but the whole team. Everybody had a game to be healthy against Indiana and play together. But yeah, I think Strus and Yang are coming along. Strus is going to be kind of up and down in terms of scoring, but he adds other dynamics in terms of rebounding, keeping things moving, keeping the offense moving. I've also noticed just having him out there, even if he's not touching the ball, really makes the opposing defense be cognizant of where he is all the time, and that kind of spreads the floor for the other guys. So even when Strus isn't out there shooting or even receiving a pass, he's standing out on the perimeter, and that spreads the defense because you can't leave him open because he's such a threat from the perimeter. So I think that the Cavs have benefited already in that sense, and I think eventually Strus, once all the guys get acclimated with each other, will start scoring more, becoming more of a threat in terms of taking more shots. And I think Niang is pretty much what they expected when they got him, which is a guy who's kind of hot and cold, but always hustling, always active, just a physical player, as well as a guy who's going to knock down some outside shots. So I think that they're moving in nicely. Obviously, Ty Jerome has appeared in just one game, has an ankle issue, and they're going to need him at some point because they're going to need a backup point guard to relieve Mitchell and Garland.
When you take a look at this road trip coming up, what do you think JB Bickerstaff wants to see as it evolves and goes on, that to make him feel like, all right, we're starting to put things together the way we want to?
Yeah, JB Bickerstaff is always going to say, are we playing Cavaliers basketball? And by that, I think I've asked him, what do you mean by that? And basically that's, we're doing the job at the defensive end and not worrying, not to say not worry about the offensive end, but making the defensive end the priority with Allen and Mobley, particularly protecting the basket, which they both do very well. And if the Cavs can do that, then it makes it a little bit easier to defend from the outside because opposing guards are, a little bit hesitant to penetrate with Allen and Mobley in there. So really, I think on the road, defense is what's going to keep you in games. And then you have guys like Mitchell, Garland, even Mobley and Strus and LeVert to kind of, take over offensively when need be. And I think we saw that against Golden State. The Cavs didn't have a great game. Obviously, that game was at home. The Cavs didn't have a great game, but they did enough to build a double-digit lead, play good defense, and win. The offense was kind of, chaotic from time to time. So really, I think that's what Coach Bickerstaff is looking for. Play good defense, and offensively, we'll come around enough during points in the game where we'll have a shot to win. So if you can do that on the road, you should be in good shape.
Take a look at this note. This is from the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell, 25-plus points in all 6 of his appearances this season. Sam, with Strus, that's going to open things up even more. If you get him in open court, just give him the points. It's a formality.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's going to score even in half court. I've seen situations where the offense just suddenly kind of comes to a stop. Nobody's hitting outside shots. And, the opposing team throws 2 guys at Mitchell, and he's still in a half court setting, finds a way to get the ball to the basket and put it in, and sometimes even draw a foul on top of it. He's obviously a dynamic scorer, really just unstoppable when it comes to that. I think the Cavs, and this is the thing that even Mitchell's probably looking for, is when they get totally healthy, don't need him to carry so much of the scoring load, don't need him to bail them out because they're more of a fluid unit. I think Mitchell's averaging over 30 points a game right now. Ideally, you'd want that down to the 26, 27 range with all your healthy players. And then, less of Donovan Mitchell scoring, more of the other guys might be more of a winning situation. That said, it's nice to have a guy who, when all else fails, you get him the ball and he gets you a bucket. And that's really the value there and why people still think, the Cavaliers' brightest days are ahead of them.
All right, before I let you go, this is from ESPN.com. Top 25, under 25 in the NBA. 8th on the list, Darius Garland, postseason success, the next step for Garland. 32 and 7 assists in Cleveland's first playoff victory since 2018, but shot just 44% in the Cavaliers' first-round loss to the Knicks. And number 12 on the list, Evan Mobley. After finishing third in Defensive Player of the Year voting, Mobley must add offensive skill in order to thrive alongside center Jared Allen. Shot just 22% on threes as a sophomore, meaning last year. When you look at this, I think you and I have talked about it before. Evan Mobley, his ceiling is really, really high, and if he gets to that ceiling, I think this team's a title contender.
Yeah, absolutely. And Evan Mobley should be higher on that list. He probably belongs at 12 right now. I think that's probably accurate, right in that range. He needs to be 1, 2, 3, somewhere in that range. And he has that type of ability. He has that type of ceiling. You just have to see the consistency, and not just from him, but from, Coach J.B. Bickerstaff has said, we have to do a better job of finding him. He's so far in the early season, we've seen those games where he's had like 3 shots in the first half, 4 shots in the first half. Then he'll come alive offensively a little bit more in the second. He just needs to get off to faster starts. We saw the one game he had 33 points and 14 rebounds. The Cavs don't expect that from him every game, but something in between what he's been doing and that consistently is what the Cavs expect from him, the fans expect from him, and he probably expects from himself. He said he wanted to be an all-star this year. He's got to raise his game a little bit, and I don't think that means going out and shooting more three-pointers. I think that making the most of the possessions that you do get, the touches that you get down low, I think that would benefit him greatly. Garland's fantastic when he's healthy, if he can stay on the court. The problem with Darius, and he's admitted this, is the turnovers, from your starting point guard, just being a little bit cognizant of making the smart pass instead of the great pass sometimes. And I think that just comes with more repetitions playing in games. I think Garland will clean that up. But, yeah, both of them, very bright futures right now, really. It's just the consistency from Mobley offensively. Defensively and rebounding, fantastic, but consistently offensively being a threat is something that both he and the Cavs need to work on.
Sam Amico, hoopswire.com as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Sam.
All right, Dave, thanks for having me, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Sam Amico, make sure you check him out. Hoopswire.com, really good NBA coverage, in particular, really good Cavs coverage. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.